We'll have coverage on the C-SPAN networks tonight. And this tweet from WashingtonPost.com, they said that low turnout in Northern Virginia, just 2 candidates on the ballot there. Looks like the Senate will be gaveling in momentarily. We'll take you there live here on C-SPAN 2. Thanks for joining in.
It's for debate equally divided in the usual form.
Mr. President.
Senator from New Mexico.
I yield back the time. Oh, no, they're not ready. Excuse me. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Illinois. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I also ask unanimous consent that there be 2 minutes for debate between the 2 votes equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees.
Without objection, so ordered.
As for the yeas and nays,
is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Bekich. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Bekich. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell.
Yeah, we're all one downstairs.
All right. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. No Way, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Carey, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Barrasso, Baucus, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Ohio, Burr, Cantwell, Coburn, Collins, Conrad, Cornyn, Durbin, Enzi, Franken, Hagan, Harkin, Hoven, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Carey, Klobuchar, Cole, Kyle, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Lieberman, Manchin, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murray, Reed of Rhode Island, Rockefeller, Sanders, Sessions, Shaheen, Thune, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Vitter, Warner, Webb, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, aye. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Isaacson, aye. Ms. Stabenow, aye. Mr. Levin, aye. Mr. Reed of Nevada, aye. Ms. Coates. Mr. Coates, aye.
Thanks for holding that open.
Mr. Tester, aye. Mr. Dement, no. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Crapo, aye. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Nelson, Nebraska, aye. Mr. Cochran, aye. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Lee, no. Need it. Mr. Lugar. Mr. Lugar, aye. Toomey. Mr. Toomey, aye. Mr. Corker. Mr. Corker, aye. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, aye. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Moran. Mr. Portman. Aye. Mr. Moran. Aye. Mrs. McCaskill. Aye. Ms. Ayotte. Aye. Ms. Graham. Mr. Graham. Aye. Mr. Carper. Mr. Carper. Aye. Mr. Paul. Aye. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Aye. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Aye. Mr. Wicker. Aye. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons. Aye. Mr. Shelby. Aye. Mr. No Way. Aye. Mr. Rubio. Aye. Mr. Schumer. Aye. Mr. McCain. Aye. Mrs. Hutchison. Aye. Mr. Inhofe. Aye.
So I just go straight to what you wrote. Announce the vote.
Mrs. Feinstein. Aye. Mr. Hatch. Aye. Mr. Casey. Aye. Mr. Chambliss. Aye. Mr. Pryor. Aye. Mr. Leahy. Do you not hear me? Mr. Leahy. Mr. Leahy. Aye.
Five to two. Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to vote or to change their vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 95, the nays are 2. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, there will now be 2 minutes of debate equally divided prior to a vote on the Rice nomination.
Mr. President.
Senator from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support the nomination of Thomas Rice to the United States District Court for Eastern District of Washington. He is one of our state's rising legal stars and has left his mark defending the community he was born in. For nearly 25 years, he served in the United States Attorney's Office in Eastern Washington, and in that time, he successfully prosecuted a variety of criminal cases to protect our Eastern Washington communities, and he has wide support from his peers and numerous accolades. So I hope my colleagues will support his nomination, making Gonzaga University his alma mater, Spokane, and the state of Washington proud of his nomination.
Sorry? Is there further debate? If not, the question is on the nomination. The yeas and nays have been ordered. There is a sufficient second. The yeas and nays have been ordered. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander? Ms. Ayotte? Mr. Barrasso? Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. DeMint, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley. Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Baucus, Bennett, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Massachusetts, Brown of Ohio, Burr, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Coates, Coburn, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Durbin, Enzi, Feinstein, Grassley, Hagan, Harkin, Hoven, Hutchison, Inhofe, Inouye, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Johnson of South Dakota, Klobuchar, Cole, Kyle, Landrieu, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McCaskill, McConnell, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Moran, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Paul, Portman, Pryor, Risch, Roberts, Rockefeller, Rubio, Sanders, Sessions, Shaheen, Shelby, Snow, Stabenow, Tester, Thune, Vitter, Warner, Webb, Whitehouse, Wicker, and Wyden. Mr. Kerry, aye. Mr. Franken, aye. Mr. Casey, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Chambliss, DeMint, Isaacson, and Lee. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Schumer, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Cochran, aye. Mr. Toomey? Mr. Toomey? Aye. Mrs. Gillibrand? Mrs. Gillibrand? Aye. Mr. Reed of Nevada. Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye.
Are there any senators wishing to vote or to change his or her vote? There being none, it is 93 ayes, 4 nays, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motions to reconsider are considered made and laid upon the table. The President will immediately be notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate will resume legislative session.
Mr. President.
The Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, I rise to pay tribute to a friend, longtime friend from New Jersey. It's a sad day for all of us from New Jersey who knew Congressman Donald Payne from North Jersey. And I pay tribute to my colleague, New Jersey Congressman Donald Payne, died this morning after a battle with colon cancer. Congressman Payne was the first African-American from New Jersey to be elected to Congress. He was a trailblazer and a fine leader, one of the finest our state has ever known. For more than 2 decades, Congressman Payne served New Jersey with distinction, but the whole world benefited from his leadership. He was a proud son of Newark and became an expert on foreign relations, led efforts to restore democracy and human rights around the world, including in places as far away from one another as Northern Ireland and Sudan. President Clinton chose Congressman Payne to accompany him on his historic tour of Africa in 1998. The congressman also worked hard. He secured more than $100 million to treat victims of malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, and AIDS, and stop the spread of these diseases in Africa's poorest nations. 3 years ago, against the State Department's advice, Congressman Payne went to Somalia to see the turmoil there for himself, narrowly escaping with his life when insurgents launched a mortar attack near his airplane as he was leaving. The congressman also helped win passage of a resolution declaring the killings in Darfur as genocide, raising global awareness of these travesties. At home, Congressman Payne was a tireless advocate for his constituents, brought significant economic development to counties in New Jersey, Essex, Hudson, and Union. Donald Payne was a former school teacher, was a leader on education issues. He worked hard to close the achievement gap with making college more affordable and bringing more equity to school funding. Congressman Donald Payne was a man of conscience and conviction. Now, I knew him for many years, and I was always struck by a soft-spoken demeanor, and that kind of made him a rarity in politics, as we know here. But Congressman Payne knew he didn't have to raise his voice. His ideas were powerful enough. The congressman put it best when he said, and I quote him here, there's a lot of dignity in being able to achieve things without having to create rapture. Donald Payne was a teacher, and as I mentioned, in Newark public schools. Newark is a poverty-stricken city, and his mission was to inspire young people to use education in their lives to achieve opportunity. The people of New Jersey sent him to Washington for the first time in 1988, and they continued sending him back by overwhelming majorities for the next 22 years. He became an inspiration to many, including members of his family, who followed him into careers in public service. But most of all, Donald Payne was an inspiration to the people he served. He gave them hope. He gave them some ideas of what they could make of their lives. And his voice sounded important and deliberate enough to convince people to try harder. And he did succeed in many successes. In 1988, during his first campaign for the House, Congressman Payne told the reporter, and I quote him again, "I want to be a role model for the kids I talk to on the street corners." He used to see a lot of them. He worked hard within his congressional district. And he said, "I want to see there are no barriers to achievement." Mr. President, Donald Payne achieved this goal. An entire generation of New Jerseyans has come of age knowing and respecting Congressman Donald Payne. He has undoubtedly inspired many young New Jerseyans to enter public service, and I expect that we will one day see some of them walking the halls of Congress following in Donald Payne's footsteps. But today, these halls feel emptier without his presence. We're going to miss Don Payne. We'll mourn his absence from our lives, but we'll also take comfort in the knowledge that his legacy will endure for a long time to come, way beyond his life. And we thank him at this time for all of the good things he brought to our people and our state. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Senator from Indiana.
President, I ask yes, consent that the quorum call be vitiated. If there
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'd like to speak as if in morning business on a matter that affects a lot of Hoosiers. I do so with a feeling of a great sense of heartfelt condolences to all who have suffered from the tragic storm and tornadoes that swept across the southern part of our state this past Friday afternoon. A gratitude for all those who responded in such a wonderful way to address this situation, and deep pride for the people of Indiana in terms of how they've responded to this. Mother Nature's unforgiving force Friday afternoon changed the lives of many Hoosiers. Imagine, if you could, a stretch of land extending for nearly 50 miles, about between a quarter of a mile and a half mile wide, and a storm that touches down at the beginning of that 50-mile stretch and moves through that with force and destruction that is almost unimaginable. Now, most of us from the Midwest are used to tornadoes, and they usually jump around and bounce down and take out a shed here and a barn there and perhaps a home there and do wreck or perhaps a short stretch of space. But nothing that I've ever seen, and most have not ever seen, is a tornado that touches down and stays down with 175-mile-an-hour winds, crushing everything in its path. And as we flew over and down that path and looked down and saw that total destruction, every home, every business in that path destroyed, like kindling. Every open field strewn with debris, some carried for miles before it was deposited. Every tree stripped bared and flattened. Every car or truck within that path damaged either by softball-sized hail or turned upside down by 175-mile-an-hour winds. A house still miraculously intact, picked up off its foundation and moved 100 yards east and put back down. Several rural towns, small rural towns in southern Indiana destroyed, totally destroyed by the force of nature. A high school of more than 1,100 students now lies in total shambles. Buses stationed at the school and cars hurled into buildings across the street. An entire family, grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, child, all killed just because the storm hit just seconds before they were able to reach the steps leading down to the basement. And yet, through all these devastating images, I saw and heard firsthand the stories of heroism and generosity and resolve that I'll always remember. 2 school bus drivers who made a split-second decision to turn around and get the kids off the bus and into a shelter. Both those buses totally destroyed just moments later. The immediate response from our first responders, the local police, the fire, the state police, the rescue teams, searching for victims, helping the injured, doing everything they could to restore some semblance of support and effort in the light of this tragedy. Neighbors rushing in to help the injured, citizens from nearby towns and counties pouring into the area, offering food and drink and shelter, people saying, do you have a place to stay? Do you have something to eat? What can we do to help? Former strangers becoming immediate friends. On Sunday morning, as I walked through what was the town of Henryville, I witnessed a remarkable scene. Displaced homeowners picking through the rubble of their home, trying to recover lost memories and precious keepsakes. A homeowner planting an American flag on the rubble of his former homes. I was deeply moved by the indomitability of the American spirit, a spirit so alive and well in a time of tragedy. Soon the first responders will be returning home if they haven't already. A job well done to wait for the next call to action, while the state and federal assessment teams begin the process today of assessing the damage and the process of restoration. And piece by piece, day by day, people of Indiana will rebuild their homes, their churches, schools, and the communities destroyed by this tornado. One woman captured the feeling of Hoosiers best when she turned to me while standing on the remains of what used to be her home and said, "We will go on. We will recover. We will make it right again." I'm asking all Americans to keep Hoosiers, Kentuckians, and all the victims of these tragic storms which raced through the Midwest, the southern parts of that, keep them in their thoughts and prayers. I ask all Americans to remember how quickly life can change, but also to remember that American spirit which brings them to reaching out to help their neighbors in trouble. I'm going to continue to work with Governor Daniels, our Indiana governor, his Homeland Security team, the administration, FEMA. A shout out for FEMA. Great strides have been made since Katrina. They were right on the scene, available, ready to help in the process, working with the state and local communities. We'll never be able to replace the lives of those lost from Mother Nature's destruction, but Hoosiers will come together to rebuild one day at a time. It's the Hoosier way, and thank goodness it's still the American way. Mr. President, I yield the floor.